Welcome to another edition of Trail Runner Nation. My name is Don Freeman.
And I'm Andy Jones-Wilkins.
And I'm Scott Warr. And Andy has been released from his contract from Crack a Brew with AJW for just this evening. Only for like about an hour and a half is he able to come onto Trail Runner Nation once again. And today we're going to be doing one of our favorite type of episodes. This one is Audio Magazine. Now, you may be saying, hey, Scott, what is Audio Magazine? Well, this is what we do on Audio Magazine. We each come with a couple different topics that we want to discuss, and we pretend like we are highly paid magazine journalists, and we create an article. With that article, we're going to have a cryptic title that may be very hard to ascertain what the article is about. That title is then pronounced to the other two. Those two get to choose and decide what they think the article is about. And then the author then reveals indeed what the article is about. Now, you may, if you're a longtime listener, you may be thinking, this sounds an awful lot like drop bag or grab bag. And it is. It's basically the same thing except for the titles. And the reason why we have these different types of episodes is purely to confuse Don. Because when he comes on these, he's trying to figure out, oh, now which one are we doing? Are we doing drop bag? Are we doing grab bag? Are we doing Audio Magazine? Today is Audio Magazine. So welcome aboard. You, as a listener, get to play along in the game and try to figure out what these articles are about.
Now, one of the cool things, sorry, Don, I ran right on top of you, but I'm next. The cool thing about some of these audio magazines we've done in the past is they would have actually been like really good magazines.
I don't know if I'd go that far, Andy.
Now, before we lose any listeners, because I would probably bail on this one already, but we didn't actually write these articles. We've lifted them from some reliable source. We came across them in the many hours that we do research, and then we tag it, we dog-ear it, and we put it to the side and wait for this episode thinking, man, when we do another Drop Bag Audio Magazine, I'm going to bring this article to share. So these are a collection of our favorite articles in the last 6 months.
And as you can see, Don still doesn't know which we're doing, Drop Bag or Audio Magazine. And because of that, I propose that Don gets to go first.
Well, usually I get a chance to go after one of you guys so I can kind of see the rules play out. So I'm just gonna lean in and go. Now, my cryptic title is Pac-Man Tom, with the subtitle, If You Know, You Know.
Wow, Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
And it gets better. Yeah.
Pac-Man
Any guesses
Tom.
there, gentlemen?
Pac-Man Tom, subtitle, If You Know, You Know.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give it a shot. I grew up in the 80s when Pac-Man was the premier video game, and I wasn't very good at it, but I do know that the only thing that Pac-Man could do besides die was to eat the little pills. So I'm thinking that this has to do with nutrition, and it's nutrition that is brought to us by a doctor or a specialist named Tom, and he's going to drop the bomb on nutrition for us.
Now, AJW, he's half right. It does involve Pac-Man because I was in the title. So well done, Scott. How about you, AJW? Any guesses on what Pac-Man Tom is? If you know, you know.
It's not about nutrition. I mean, it's a play on words. It's about packing. It's about packing, how to pack for, hey, if you're a good pack, these days, everyone wears a pack in their races. They have to have their mandatory gear. They have to have everything else. And, and sort of, if you know, is the subtitle, which is like sort of the tricks to packing, right? The sort of tricks to maybe work your way around the rules when it comes to, your emergency blanket or your rain pants or your 400 calories that are in all these mandatory gears. So it's like Pac-Man. I have no idea what the Tom is. That's probably some weird thing that Don found on ChatGPT. But I think Pac-Man and if you know, it's about packing and how to use the system to your advantage.
You guys were very, very, very good. And it's too late for me to rewrite the article based on what you've said. But I think that they could stand alone with your explanations. But in fact, if you were a runner, we'd have to send emergency help, perhaps a helicopter to locate you. That's how far off you are. So let me give you kind of a summary of what Pac-Man Tom is. And some people out there listening are going like, I totally know. I've been following this guy. I know Pac-Man Tom. And here's why they know. The Pac-Tom project is remarkable running endeavor, where Tom Murphy VII, a Google engineer and a YouTube creator, aimed to run the length of every street in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And here's what you need to know. Tom spent 16 years, from 2006 to 2022, running every single street in Pittsburgh, covering over 7,000 streets across 90 district neighborhoods. He logged an impressive 3,661.1 miles. That's roughly 5,892 kilometers for those that are using the measurements as they should be. And here were some of the rules. Every run had to start from his house or a house where he spent the night. So that's interesting, and there's a story behind that, I'm sure. If we're lucky enough to get him on, we'll ask him how that worked out. He defined running as it's fairly laxy, allowing for walking breaks and some varying paces. So now I'm thinking, he's actually a trail runner in a road world, because we wouldn't even say that. Of course we vary our paces. Of course we walk at times. So I'm going to say he's a natural trail runner in the making. He wore a GPS device to track his routes, and he marked off the completed on a road map. And Tom excluded certain areas such as highways because they were too dangerous to run, stairs just because they suck and you can't drive a car on them, and private property because he didn't want to get in trouble by any landowners. So his story can be found on YouTube. He has a documentary on it, and he's very entertaining. He has a great sense of humor. You can tell by the way he lays out his story and the comments he makes. So I think it's, if you're at work and you're looking for something to do, before you look at your list of things you should complete, go check out Pac-Man Tom and watch his story.
So his nickname is Pac-Man Tom.
Pac-Man Tom, and his name, as I stated earlier, Tom Murphy VII. And I don't know if anybody is the seventh. And I'm thinking he did what? I was looking at some of the numbers here. He did 7,000 streets, and I feel like maybe that's where the seventh came from. AGW?
Is he? I guess I want to. I heard the deal about the rules, like he had to start from his own house or a house where he slept.
Right.
But was he? I mean, was he able to do any out and backs or anything, or did he have to?
Yeah.
Oh, he was
come back.
So it was just making sure that he did all the streets, right?
Right. And when you look at the YouTube clips, you'll see some streets have been traveled a number of times. There's so he was very, very busy on the out from his house. He covered those areas very well because sometimes he had to go back just to get a little piece, which means he had a long run just to get a ridiculous short.
So that total number of miles, though, the total number of miles is like all of his running or just the running to do all of the streets?
Well, no, that's a good question, AJW, and I don't have that answer. Are there 3,600 miles of streets in Pittsburgh, or is that how many miles he ran to get all those streets?
Right.
I think we'd have to ask him. Yeah.
Yeah. We should
but
get
it
him
doesn't
on.
Get you closer. It doesn't get you closer to how to pack. Okay, so you didn't get it.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah. All right. But now,
All right, gentlemen.
Now I get the Pac-Man thing. That was a good one, Don. That was good. You came in strong right out of the gate.
You didn't expect it.
And he threw us off with that subtitle. You know when you know you know. I don't get that part, but it was a good throw.
Because those people that are listening, are going like, of course, Pac-Man Tom. Of course, if you know, you know. They know who he is. Okay. It's like, why would you even bring this up? How come these guys don't know?
And I guess
you know.
I guess if you live in Pittsburgh, you know.
especially around his home.
Yeah. All right, Andy.
All right. Who's up?
Andy, you go next.
All right. This one, this is a good one, I think.
You can't judge that.
We're the judge
as
of
the
that.
author.
It turns out you can teach an old dog new tricks. It turns out you can teach an old dog new tricks.
I know exactly what this is.
I know. I do too.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm going to say that it has something to do with the distance of a run. Some running distance.
I'm going to guess 250 miles.
AJW?
Yeah, I threw you guys a softball. And by the way, War, it's 257 miles.
Okay.
This article is about my recent run / hike / whatever it was at the Cocodona 250 here in Arizona, which took place. We're recording this in mid-June. It took place about a month and a half ago, and I ran my first 250 plus mile race, and thought it would be fun to put a little article into Audio Magazine about it. And so that's what this article's about.
And I want to make known, we recently did an episode with Magda Boulay, Bob Crowley, and Dr. John Diana about running after a joint replacement. And that's exactly what Andy did. You may have heard on some of our episodes where he had his hips resurfaced. That didn't take. Is that right, Andy? And you finally went in and got both hips replaced, or just the one?
No, both hips replaced. Yeah, the first one, my right hip, was replaced in February of 2023, and my left hip in October of 2023, and I ran the Javelina 100 in October of 2024, and then just recently the Cocodona 250 in May of 2025. So it's amazing to even say that, but yeah, and I'm pretty sure I've talked to the folks at Cocodona, and I think I'm the only person to have run Cocodona with two replaced hips.
I would put some money on that. Yes, I'll put next month's rent on that one. Yes.
Andy, I'm curious. I want to hear about how this first greater than 100-mile race went for you. But did your doctor know that you were going to do Javelina 100, and did he know that you were going to do Cocodona 257?
Well, he knew I wanted to run ultra marathons again. And and this is a great doctor, by the way. His name is Perry Evangelista. There's two brothers, Perry and his brother. They do hip replacements here in Scottsdale, Arizona. They do a fantastic job. They've done like professional athletes and everything else. But he knew I wanted to run ultra marathons. I'm not exactly sure if he knew I was going to run 100 miles, and he certainly didn't know I was going to run 257 miles. But more to the point, I don't think he knew when he said, well, when I went back for my checkup and he said, oh, you're cleared to do all activities. I think some of the activities I did during Cocodona 250 were probably not what he had in mind.
So AJW, let me ask you this question. What does it feel like running on replaced hips?
It's the joint itself. The actual joint itself really feels good. It it feels like what it is, which is a 1.5 year old joint. All of the muscles and ligaments and tendons and everything that supports the hip, everything from the groin to the glutes to the hamstrings, they're constantly adapting, constantly adapting to, I mean, let's face it, for 57 years, I had hips that were a certain way. And then all of a sudden in 2023, I had hips that were a different way. And while those hips were really, really great, the muscles and tendons and ligaments around them really had to adapt to that. And I think that is part of what I will continue to do as I evolve in this. Now, there were a few things that happened in the Cocodona 250 that really for the first time, and if anybody's seen any of the videos, I did develop a lean for the first time. We've talked about the runner's lean, and in my case, I have a really, really bad bunion on my right big toe. And it, in normal conditions, even a 100-mile race, it doesn't become inflamed enough to impact my gait or anything else. But in this, it did. So I ended up favoring, and what do you tell everybody knows, you tell people when they have a lean, you got to push off your big toe. You got to keep yourself moving forward. And I couldn't even push off my big toe. So every time I tried to push off, I just lilted over to the left, right? And so like with because the bunion's on the right. So with each step, I lilted more and more to the left. That had nothing to do with the hips, but I think the fact that the hips are so strong, right? They're brand new, they're made of ceramic. It just means the rest of my body is still catching up to them. And that's really kind of the biggest challenge, I think, of running with at least with replaced hips. Now I know that knees and shoulders and ankles and other joints are a lot more complicated than hips. So I can't speak to those, but certainly in my situation, I think that my hips were the least of my worries.
Andy, as you're talking about this, it just occurred to me that I don't know. Do they have a warehouse full of hips and you get a small, medium, large version of the hip, or is the hip, do they take x-rays and form the hip to make it like your original hips, or are you getting a completely different hip that maybe your body is not accustomed to?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and one that I definitely asked Dr. Evangelista, because I think one of the reasons my hip resurfacings, which I had in 2015 and 2018, didn't take is because they didn't actually fit. Okay, so in the what Dr. Evangelista and his team do is certainly they measure the two key measurements, at the risk of going too much down the rabbit hole, are the size of your femoral head, right, the top of your femur, and the size of your acetabulum, or your hip socket, if you will, right? Because the femoral head goes into the hip socket, right? So while there's not a warehouse of those, there are, by millimeter by millimeter by millimeter, different sizes. So when the hip replacement process, right, replaces the femoral head with a new femoral head. So they can measure that really, really accurately, and then get an implant that is pretty much exactly that. And similarly, they can measure the acetabulum and make sure that that head is going to fit the acetabulum exactly as it should. Because remember, the main reason people are getting hip replacements is because they don't have any more cartilage or any of the other stuff in there that their natural hip provided. So they've really got to make sure that the fit is really good. So, I mean, these companies that make, the company that made my hips is called Dupuy, Dupuy. And they only make ceramic hips, and it was ceramic on ceramic because they also put a ceramic coating on the acetabulum because there's no like cartilage in there or anything else. So like the femoral head and the the acetabulum need to run against each other, and then they use the body's natural synovial fluids to like lubricate it. So in terms of measurements, absolutely they are correct. Now, one of the things that can happen is you can end up with one leg being slightly longer than the other, right? Because people have leg length discrepancy or a hip tilt or a pelvic tilt or anything like that, and that's something you need to adapt to as you recover from the surgery and as you go through the rest of your life with these two replaced hips in my case.
Scott, do you have any more questions on hip replacement to avoid getting a medical degree somewhere, or can I ask a question about 200 miles?
I was just going to say I needed to write down, and in tomorrow's the progress of tomorrow's day for me, at some point I'm going to use the word acetabulum, if I said that correctly. I'm going to try to use that word in my everyday life tomorrow. So thank you, Andy.
I mean, most people refer to it as the hip socket, but like the actual name is acetabulum. So it's a fun word to say.
It is.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to the trail, AGW,
Yeah.
you've run 100 miles before,
Yeah.
and you're now going beyond 100. I know for me, at the end of the finish line of 100, I am so grateful for the last step. There is not like one more step that I want to go. What went through your mind at 100 plus? Did you have that same, I'm so done, or were you just in the middle of a long run?
I love that you asked that, Don. I was so stressed out, maybe more than I've been in any other ultra, perhaps other than maybe my first 100-miler, with the issue of sleep. And so I tried, this course is particularly hard. So I hit like mile 77. I'd been running for 24 hours at mile 77. I tried to sleep then. I couldn't. I was like a little kid excited about the next day. Maybe I'd had too much caffeine or whatever. I couldn't sleep. I tried again at mile 85. I couldn't sleep. I tried again. Finally, at mile 95, I was able to sleep. I got a nice 1-hour nap. It was fortuitous because it was right in the midst of a thunderstorm that was going on. And I said, and my crew and I were trying all kinds of different things like white noise and, certain sleep conditions in the vehicle that I was sleeping in. But so the idea of running, the running part at that point, again, this is only mile 95 now. The running part was the easy part. It was like, how am I going to manage to sleep? And if you know anything about the Cocodona course, it's really, really hard for the first 70 miles. And then it takes a little bit of a break. But then from mile 95 until about a mile 125, it goes up and over a huge mountain, Mingus Mountain. It descends down into this valley on really technical trails. And then it winds its way on lots of like old mining roads into the old mining town of Jerome, Arizona, which is the 125-mile mark. So it's like the halfway or just about the halfway. And I was so stressed out about having to do all that without having sleep that preoccupied me. Now, you get to Mingus Mountain Camp. It's a mile 105. And I was like, I've already done a 100-miler. I've done this before. Now I've been able to sleep. Now it's pouring down rain. It's muddy. There's people dropping out left and right. And I knew I wasn't going to do that. So I felt really good. Like, okay, let's just go. I had Pacer with me. And at that point, Don, is when it completely shifted. And when I had this like aha moment of, you know what, this 200-mile thing, it's a totally different sport. Right. And so when I say the title of this is You Can Teach an Old Dog New Tricks, that really was the lesson for me. Like, yes, there are people who do really well at 100-milers and do really well at 200-milers. And there are people who love to do one and not the other and everything else. But I was like, wow, this is, and so for the whole subsequent, whatever it was, 75 hours, my whole mindset changed. And it was obviously focusing on the usual things like sleep and food and making sure I had the right gear and making sure that everything was going well. And I knew what the course was going to be ahead of me. But man, once I made that shift, it was awesome. And Don, like all the lessons you taught us years ago about what happens in 200s with people grouping up and, becoming, partners on the trail. I said several times during the race, I feel like I'm in the Cocodona bubble, right? You'd see somebody and then you wouldn't see them for 15 hours and then you'd see them again. And this year's Cocodona had a unique situation because there were two sections because of an endangered species, the Mexican spotted owl that's nesting in a couple of areas on the course. You were not allowed to have a pacer through those sections, and they were both in latter parts of the race. People just grouped up. And ran. It's a 16-mile section. It's going to take us, at that time, 5 hours. Let's just go together. Let's just grab some food and get out. It was so much fun. And all the bad weather was gone by then. And it was at that point where I was like, man, this is, I don't even know why they call this a race, because in a race, you're like, you're but they do. And I understand that. And for maybe the people in the front, certainly it is a race, but that was just so much fun to experience that.
It is
what, if
you
what
guys are
Andy
forgetting the signals.
No, I had a signal.
Okay.
If what Andy is talking about is intriguing to you at all, he did a full episode at Crack a Brew with AJW recently. If you go back onto his podcast, he has a full episode where he recaps the entire race. And I'll let you know, it's really a great, fascinating story.
Thanks, Scott.
And it really is when you get to that distance, the more risk that's out there, the tighter the community becomes, and it's the trail community on steroids. It's just amazing and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I want
to tell one more story. So it got to Fort Tuthill. Fort Tuthill is mile 213, and I knew it was going to be the last place that I was going to sleep. They had a really nice sleep station there. By that point, I had figured out sleep. The rain was gone, and yet leaving Fort Tuthill is the second 16-mile no pacer section. So I was taking my shoes off and getting ready to sleep, and I got a text message from the wife of a guy I'd been kind of going back and forth with through the day. And she said, hey, Dave would really like to run with you tomorrow. You guys are both going to take a little sleep here. Just make sure you text us, before you leave. And I was like, oh man, that'd be awesome. And that's exactly what we did. We both slept for maybe an hour or hour and 15 minutes. And we got up and we got some food and we kind of made eye contact with one another. And, it's really hard at that point in a 200 to even get your shoes on, and so we're wrestling with putting our shoes on. And finally we stumble out of the aid station. And this is one place where they have a mental check-in, right? So they have a person that I'd never experienced this ever in my life in running ultras, but they have a person standing by the door. It was an indoor facility, but standing by the door before you walk out, and they ask you, 4 or 5 questions that are very simple. Like they would ask you if you had a concussion, what's the day, what's the month, and it was really, really cool. And I mean, and of course the jokester in me was like, wow, if I answer these wrong, do I get to stop? But no one was going to let me stop. So anyway, Dave and I left and we went out together and just had a grand old time running that next 16-mile section. And then, and then we went off and went different paces and everything else. But man, that kind of thing is so, so cool about this distance and something, for this memory, the memory of Cocodona, that's probably the thing I'll cherish the most.
And those 16 miles that you think about your training miles and you go, yeah, you can knock that out pretty quick, and it doesn't move the hour hand too far on my watch, but out there at 200 miles, and depending on the terrain, that could be a good day out there.
Dude, 15 miles, you get a whole different understanding of miles. You're like, oh, it's going to be a 16-mile section. That'll probably be 6-7 hours. You know,
Yeah.
we better have enough.
Conservatively. Yeah.
You got to have enough food and enough water and sunscreen and a raincoat in case it rains. And yeah.
Well, that was a good story, AJW, and a good article. Teach an old dog new tricks.
I think it maybe you can teach an old dog new tricks. I think is
very good. I'll keep that on my nightstand for some evening reading.
Yeah, thanks,
Scott.
Guys. That was super fun.
Scott, I think you have the next article.
Yep, just a second.
Oh,
he's writing it. He's finishing it up now.
He's just doing the conclusion right now.
Yep. I had to do a quick edit. My editor said that it wasn't written quite well. This is the title of my first article.
All right.
Just a swish of the rosé will get you there. Just a swish of the rosé will get you there.
Boy, that's tough. You know, I've been, I think, almost on every Drop Bag Audio magazine, and so I would say this is a tough one, Scott. You have done a good job on distraction.
Don's still calling it Drop Bag Audio magazine.
Right. All right. So Don, I think we should group think this. So rosé, he's using rosé.
It's a wine.
Yeah, it's a wine, but also if he dropped the A, it would be a rose.
But it's Scott. Remember, it's Scott. Don't try to get too clever.
Yeah, I'm not that smart.
He's a simple man. He's a simple man.
Well,
say it one more. Say it one more time.
Just a swish of the rosé will get you there.
Swish is an active word too, Don.
It is, and it makes me think of the Nike swoosh, which kind of swishish. I mean, we might be talking about running gear, might be talking about the colors. Here it is. It's all come together. Okay, your performance depends on the type of uniform or kit that you have on. The color red has shown to be more aggressive, and people's finish times are better when they wear something red. How's that for a group think?
I like this. I think I'm going to go a slightly different direction. I think the swish. I think the swish is like about, in basketball, when you hit a shot and it's a swish, it's just completely, it's a perfect shot. It's dialed in, it's like, and this article is about when your training is dialed in, when you're just like dropping threes from out, it's, and so this article is like, get your training dialed in, get your rosé, dropping threes from, from downtown. It's a swish. You got it.
That's good, AJW. I think whatever he tells us now is going to be suspect, because I think one of these two
would be way better articles.
They would be, and maybe we could bring Steph Curry on the episode one of these days. This is what it's about. It's a research project, and maybe the sample size was not big enough to make it really a scientific study, but this is what they found, that mouth rinsing with a pink, non-caloric, artificially sweetened solution improves self-paced running performance and feelings of pleasure. So this is what they did. Researchers had 10 active participants run a 30-minute treadmill time trial under two conditions: rinsing with a clear, artificially sweetened drink and rinsing with a bright pink version of the same drink. Same ingredients, just colored with that bright pink. And this is what they found. Runners performed significantly better with the pink rinse, running 4.4% farther on average. They also reported greater pleasure during that run. And although there were no physical changes, only perceptual and behavior was seen, improved that. The color pink, and this is the reason why, the color pink is physiologically associated with sweetness, energy, and reward. This likely amplified the placebo effect, making runners feel that they were getting a boost. even though they weren't. So they weren't even ingesting the liquid. All they were doing was putting it in their mouth, swishing it around, and spitting it out. But the color of the liquid actually gave them an improved performance.
That's an interesting article. And now you think back to, what colors are some of these drinks are, and they are a fluorescent, purple or pink or something, whether it's Tailwind or Goo or whatever you're drinking. There are some colors to it.
Maybe this is why Pepto-Bismol works.
Maybe. I've never tried that. Have you?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. I've thrown that stuff down like it's going out of style.
Maybe that's my problem. I don't have a hydration bladder full of Pepto-Bismol.
I don't know. I do think it's interesting to think about the impact. So what I'm hearing you say, Scott, is like the visual. The person would see the pink liquid.
Yes.
Then they would swish it around in their mouth, and it would then give them this feeling of relief, I guess, or recovery, or wow. Kind of brings me back to the old school Gookinade, which was one of the first. Remember Gookinade, which was like in the 80s and early 90s. I mean, that was bright pink. Used to love that stuff.
It would be interesting to and here's the thing. So what does this mean for me as a runner? I don't know whether I ever look at the liquid I'm ingesting. I usually use handhelds, and they're usually in a kind of a holder, and so I can't see what color it is. And if you think of, Tailwind is a great example. They have a bunch of different flavors. I think they're all clear. I don't know if they have a color. So I wonder if looking at the liquid and maybe putting a little bit of food coloring, some red food coloring in there, and look at it, it sounds like it could actually have a positive experience or a positive effect.
It makes me think of Gatorade when I walk into your local whatever place that stores those. They're all some kind of color, very colorful.
And neon colored, right?
Yeah. Fluorescent like things that you don't see in nature.
They may have got it back when they started making Gatorade. They may have already thought of that. So anyway, that's my first article.
That was a good one.
So Freeman, you're back on tap.
Oh, I've got two to choose from, and one is just as good as the other. What shall I do?
Number 2.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. And I don't know if it's my better of the two, but I think it's one that has a little substance. And the name of the article here, and in this particular magazine, it was this article was dog-eared. It was obviously highlighted by someone. It even looked as if someone tried to break it out of the binding and take it with them, and they were caught, and they had to put it back. So I think that's the article, and it's titled, "Settle in and Get It Done." Settle in and get it done.
That's an easy one. It's finding the zen in running. That point in your running where you abandon your anxiety, you abandon preconceptions, you abandon your world, and you get into a zen moment, and it's almost like you're floating. I think that's what it's about.
AJW, you gonna agree with this obscure thought of Scott's, or are you gonna come up with something different?
I'm going to disagree with Scott. I think, Don, knowing you as the august writer that you are, and the way in which you like to turn things on their head, for decades now, we have been told by ultra running veterans to beware of the chair. Right, in big long races, to just not sit down, not don't ever sit down, don't show weakness. You get to an aid station, you get your business done, and you know what this article is about? This article is debunking that. This article is saying, you know what? Settle in. You get to the aid station, You got 3 minutes. You're at Michigan Bluff. Sit in that chair. Take your shoes off. Air them out. Eat your pierogies and grilled cheese sandwich and quesadillas, and then get up out of the chair and get it done. So this is turning that sort of old wives' tale of beware the chair and saying, you know what? 3 minutes off your feet will do a good thing. Settle in, do your stuff, and then get it done.
Wow. That was, and I accused you guys of needing a helicopter rescue on my last title. This one, I think you're on the helicopter going after the guy. Very, very close. And settle in and get it done. And I've never had a mantra. People talk about, I'm going to get this hill with my iron will, whatever it might be. And I always thought, I don't have one. And I don't know if I need one if that's your mantra. And then as I'm doing this breath work, did I tell you guys that I'm doing cold plunge now and some breath work? Did I mention that on some other? Yes, I have.
You may have mentioned it once or twice.
Okay. Maybe more to you on our run, Scott. Most conversations.
I can't wait to try it out when I come to stay in room 1.
It's coming, and it'll be here. And through experiencing that of the breathing and holding the breath and settling in and accepting it and knowing this isn't going to kill me. This cold, people aren't getting pulled out of cold plunges, frozen like ice cubes. I'm going to live. So settling into your environment and getting it done, that correlates very well with long runs. As a mantra, settle in, accept what's happening to you, deal with it, and overcome. Just don't panic, because, complaining about it doesn't solve it. Complaining about it takes energy and robs the energy that you may need to overcome, to solve the problem. So clear your mind of all the clutter and all the complaining and use that energy that you're complaining about to settle in, focus, look for solution, because you've got to change something. You've got to either change your pace, you've got to change your fluid intake, you've got to change what you're eating, you've got to change your shoe. I don't know what you need to change, but time helps change it as well. So settling in, absorbing what's happening, taking it all in, and just know this too shall pass. So settle in and get it done is my new mantra of when it gets ugly, because it does, to just accept it and push through it and know that it's going to pass. So I have a mantra now. Scott?
When is that tub coming? When is it going to get delivered to your house?
It's not here yet. It was due on the 6th, which is 4 days ago. And so it'll be here for AJW at Western States, no doubt.
Hey, Don, hearing you tell this story does bring me back to that time during the COVID years when you set the slowest known time on the Western States course, the SKT. I mean, nobody settled in better than you and the boys then. I mean, I hate to tell a tired story, but it's still a good one, where poor Scott was waiting for you at Devil's Thumb. He realized you weren't going to get there. He drove back down the hill, went to worked a whole day, turned around, came back, and you still weren't there. So if there's anybody who's an expert in settling in, it's you.
Well, thank you for that, HEW. And, something about time stretching really moves the story well and further away from the truth. But I'll accept that. And that is a good story, and it will never tire with me. So that's a good one.
We may need to do a live recording of AJW getting in that ice plunge when he's out for Western States.
Oh, I would. Yeah, because I hate you. Look, I live in Arizona. I love it. I hate the cold. So this is a challenge. It'll be interesting. I just hope you and Michelle have lots of warm towels, and I know you're going to have lots of good snacks. So that'll be good.
That's true. Well, it'll be waiting for you, AGW. And I'm right now waiting on your next topic.
All right. So I've got an article I've been working on now. I mean, I've been working on this on and off for maybe the last 5 years, in the way kind of the sport's been going. And and what we know and what we don't know about the human body and everything else. So it's a simple title, but it's actually a pretty complex article, and it's titled, "Hey, dude, take it with a grain of salt." Hey, dude, take it with a grain of salt.
Oh, yeah, I've got that.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, obviously he's going into hydration, electrolyte replacement for long runs. Name of the title again, AGW? Hey, dude.
Hey, dude, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, you can't have an electrolyte replacement drink without some electrolytes in it. Take it with a grain of salt. I think he's going to teach us a little bit about hydration.
I think I was going down a completely different path, but I think, AJW is coming back to the traditional aid station food, and that's boiled potatoes dipped in salt. And how simple yet profound that nutritional item is. It's a starch and it has the electrolytes. So you're getting a little bit of carbs and you're getting the electrolytes all in one. Now, I will say, and Don knows this, I've said it multiple times, I cannot stand boiled potatoes dipped in salt at an aid station. It makes me hurl. So even though I think that's what the article is about, I'm still not going to do it.
Scott, I like your answer better than my answer. So I'm going to come over to your camp and hang out there and see what AJW has to say.
I don't know where that expression came from, take it with a grain of salt, right? But when somebody says take it with a grain of salt, what they're basically saying, right, is like, well, someone's going to tell you something and maybe it's right and maybe it's not. So you've got to just maybe accept it or maybe not. And what I've come to conclude, and what this article is about, is that there are 3 things we need, 100% we need, to succeed in long distance runs. There's no debate about this. We need water, we need calories, and we need salt. Right? And I was reminded of the movie. Oh, it was, you guys, we're all old enough to remember, like the Academy Award winning movie Gandhi, when Mahatma Gandhi was rallying the people of India to stand up to, the British Empire. And he created the Salt March, and he and thousands of his followers literally walked to the sea to make salt. And there's a scene in the movie where there's this British guy who's like, this is brilliant. I mean, he's got us. It's hot, it's humid, and he's walking to the sea to make salt. What this article is about is, it's pretty simple. Just take all this advice about paleo diets or this diet or vegan or this or that or everything else. You know what? If you run trails and you want to run for a long time, it's water, calories, and salt. If you take care of that, everything's going to be fine. Take the rest with a grain of salt.
Ooh, I love it. I would love to see a list of the things of requirements for a runner in 1980 versus 2025 and the list of items that they show up with, right?
Yeah.
Hey, and just for you that were thinking, boy, where did that saying come from? I did a little research, and I have at least one suggested origin of that take with a grain of salt. It's comes from the roots in ancient Rome, where the saying addito salus grano, which is after having added a grain of salt. The idea was that a grain of salt could help make poison less harmful. Symbolically, something unpleasant or dangerous became more tolerable with just a bit of salt.
Very nice. You put the research team on that, Scott?
I did.
Good.
And Ryan, you can remove that because obviously it wasn't taken or received enthusiastically by this team.
No, I thought it was good. I thought it was good.
No, I thought it was good. I just think your reading of the Latin was a little suspect.
I took 2 years of Latin. 2 years of Latin in middle school, Andy.
Yeah, you should have taken 2 more.
Yeah, you got to leave that one in, Brian. That's good.
I didn't say that I scored well. I just said that I took the classes.
Very good. All right, Scotty, what do you got?
Okay, here is my final topic of the magazine. It's the back cover, and we all know that we try to do a peak ending. The Power of Moments, which is a great book that you need to read if you haven't read it. I think it's by Heath is the name of the
Doug Heath or the Heath brother.
The Heath brothers.
Hang on.
Yep.
Yeah, hang on.
Okay, we'll wait for Andy to get the reference.
No, I don't have that book, but it's Chip and Dan Heath.
Yes.
This is made to stick, so this is one of their earlier books, but yeah, that's what you're talking about, right?
Power of Moments. One of the key takeaways from that book is that you want to peak end. So I'm going to make the bold claim that we're going to peak end this episode with this topic, this titled article, Ultra Running Isn't Just Between Your Ears, but now in your ears. So ultra running isn't just between your ears, but now in your ears.
I think it's an article about Trail Runner Nation is what I'm thinking.
That's pretty...
I was looking in the mirror when I said it.
I know, I was going to say that's pretty... I don't know what the word is.
Oh, there's something that's not a good word. I won't
No,
like it.
it's not a good word. Andy's thinking hard.
Yeah, I am, because I think there's... I know, Don went with the, not surprisingly, the simple response. I do think the in your ears, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of stuff coming at you about shoes and about equipment and about which course you should do and how you qualify for this thing or that thing, or it's in your ears all the time, right? And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. So this article is about, hey, let's pump the brakes. Let's pump the brakes on ultra running always being this thing that you always have to do the next best, coolest, biggest race with the biggest lottery and everything else. It doesn't always have to be in your ears. Sometimes all it has to do is just be, on your feet and on your legs and with your training partners and everything else. So I think this article is a little bit of an expose on the current state of the sport. And it's saying, hey guys, enough is enough. Let's not be in everybody's ears all the time. Let's pull it back and bring us back to our roots.
I like that, AJW. I'm not going to apologize for my astute answer, but I like where you went with it.
I didn't say your answer was unastute. I said it was simple.
What do you expect?
Well, unlike Andy's guess, this is not an expose, but rather a product review. There is a device called Vi. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's VI, and they are AI-powered earbuds. Two of Don's favorite things. Earbuds and AI.
And AI.
They're designed by a company called LifeBeam, and they're equipped with aerospace-grade biosensors that track heart rate variability, motion, elevation, and environment. They were originally developed for pilots and astronauts, and they function as a real-time coach during runs, offering voice feedback on metrics like pace, step rate, elevation, and heart rate. So it provides personalized in-the-moment coaching, such as encouraging quicker cadence, steady pacing, and motivational cues, making workouts more efficient and engaging. And here's where the AI comes in. The Vi learns your physiology, builds custom plans, and adjusts feedback based on your progress, stress, fatigue, and environmental changes. And you can also connect it to your Bluetooth device And so you can be listening to your favorite podcast, as Don mentioned, listen to your favorite podcast, but then still have that coach in your ear giving you some motivation or some cues to keep you where you need to be on your run. So that's what this article is about. It's a product review. It is a product review by the author who has not ever tried them or seen them.
Now, AJW, you are a coach. In fact, you're coaching some runners coming down from Squaw Valley here in a couple of weeks. What do you think of this product as from a coach's standpoint?
I mean, I almost I almost felt like I was back at Cal 2 barfing a little bit when Scott read that.
Hey, you know what? You know what would be even better is to have the earbuds connected to a satellite where AJW could be following the pace and the heart rate and everything. He's getting live feedback, and he could verbally give you cues live and in person.
Yeah, the last thing I would ever want for anybody is for them to buy that device.
Now,
they're not a sponsor, by the way.
That's an endorsement if I've ever heard of one. That was fantastic. And they'll be calling right away, I'm sure, to get on board. AGW, you're part of the biking race community as well with your son, and they do some of that stuff. I remember watching back in the day with Lance Armstrong, and they had heart rate monitors going, and they were watching, pace and cadence, and they had coaches feeding all kinds of information back to the riders.
Right, but remember, that information is not about like get your cadence up or get your heart rate up. That's about like, hey, the dude who's behind you by 10 seconds is about to catch you. Right? Like that's tactical stuff, and I completely buy that. Like in all my competitive years at Western States, I love to get information about, how far back is Hal Kerner or how far up is Jeff Rose or whatever else. That's completely different than your cadence just dropped, 10%, and so you better pick it up or you're a loser, or whatever. I'm sure they don't say you're a loser, but it's like to me, it's like the whole Pelotonization of the sport. And yeah, if that's going to get more people out there and more people living healthy and, but just speaking for me, I'm perfectly happy just leaving this house in the morning and running for an hour. I don't need anything in my ears. I got plenty going on in my head. I don't need anything more.
There's an article that one of our favorite guests, Alex Hutchinson, just wrote in Outside Online in his Sweat Science articles, and it's about GPS or wearable technology, and they say that as good as they are, it's better. You have better information by feel. So one of Don's favorite things is tune into your body. And if you can do that, those cues are actually more accurate than the wearables that we're using.
Yeah, one of the things I talk about a lot with the athletes that I coach is what now everybody knows is RPE, or rate of perceived exertion. And as for all of these wearables, whatever else, if you know in your body, okay, you're running at a pace where you could have a conversation with somebody. You're running at a pace where you could barely say a sentence. You're running at a pace where you could only say one word and it would likely be 4 letters, right? Like, that in your body, your heart knows that, your brain knows that. Sure, there are ways you can exceed that in competition and in everything else. But I honestly think, yes, these wearables have a place, but you look, your heart rate is this, you're feeling this way, you probably know it, and it's probably right.
Yeah, I think using these this gear as secondary information, learn to listen to your body first, trust your body over something strapped to your arm. And use that to just as secondary information, but listen to yourself first.
And I would say too, getting the information after the fact. Right. So instead of the person like in your ears all the way, you do an hour and a half run and whatever, right? Do that hour and a half run on your RPE rated. Then when you get back, okay, then look at the data. Then crunch the data all you want, however much time you need. Well, I was in this zone for this amount of time or whatever else. Go nuts on that. But like in the midst of being out there experiencing what it is to be exercising in the open air and being an athlete, I don't think you need that. I really don't.
I will say that I, as a runner, only running, I don't know, maybe now for what, 15, 16, 17, 18 years or whatever. When I started using a heart rate monitor, I was able to learn how to listen to my body using that device. So I would be huffing and puffing up a hill. I'd look down and I'd say, oh, that's my heart rate. And so the next time I'm huffing and puffing at that same perceived effort, I would say, I'm probably at this heart rate. And now, Don and I sometimes play a game where we guess each other's heart rate. So I have a perceived effort, and I know what my heart rate is, and I can tell you within a couple beats what my heart rate is. But I guess what his heart rate is, and he does the same thing. So I go, yeah. Okay, I'm huffing and puffing up this hill. My heart rate's at like 169. That means Don's at 122.
That's because I'm a mile and a half behind him walking. but cautionary tale here. Perceived effort, amazing. Sometimes when you're up for your A race and your adrenaline is going and your perceived effort is masked by all these endorphins and everything that's coursing inside of your body, and you can't always trust perceived effort. And it's nice to look down and go, ooh, I'm at 154. I cannot sustain all day at 154. I better rely on this piece of data coming in.
Right.
I've learned to trust it to be accurate through all of my training. When it says 154, I'm at 154. And guess what? I cannot hold 154 for another 50 miles. So I need to back off and use it as a governor, at least till you get the excitement out of the start of that race where everybody's bolting out and running a little bit faster than they should.
I'm reminded of Gordy Ainsley's famous line of, you don't want to get at Western States, you don't want to get caught up in the exuberance of the morning. And I completely hear you, Don. But what you and both of you guys are talking about heart rate monitors, right? Heart rate monitors are fantastic. It's just real-time data right on your wrist. It's not someone telling you in your ears, go team in training, you got this. I think that's totally different when you look and be like, oh, 154. I should be at 134. You know what I mean? So, I'm sure this product will do really well, but I hope it doesn't do too well.
Well, Andy, thank you for coming on and doing another edition of Audio Magazine. I received some great feedback from one of your coaching athletes, a friend of ours, Craig. If you look at our website, somewhere on there, we call him the human Kokopelli because we have a picture of him jumping and looking like the performance-enhancing Kokopelli. He has now been a student of yours now for maybe a year, maybe not quite a year, and he said that he has learned more. He's an older gentleman, just like we are, in the 60. I think he's actually turning 60 this year. And he said that the time that you've been spending coaching has really, really helped him. He has a race coming up where he's going to add another 10 kilometers to a 50K and go 60 kilometers for his 60th birthday. And so if anyone out there is looking for a coach, don't just take our word for it. Andy is very good. Third-party endorsement right here.
Well, and Craig is a wonderful guy. He's a professor at BYU. He's a smart guy. He's kind of come back to the sport after some time away, and he's really embracing what it means to be an ultra runner. And I think he just in his case and in a lot of athletes that are in that demographic, they're sort of our age and they have maybe an athletic background. Maybe they have a little bit more time on their hands now, but they're a lot slower than they used to be. I mean, I think sometimes 5%, 10%, 15% gains can go a long way. And so I love coaching an older athlete. I mean, thank you for that endorsement, Scott. But I think older athletes seems to be where my niche is. I'm coaching Michael Coppy, who's a 74-year-old in Western States this year from Duluth, Minnesota. And I mean, he's really gunning for a finish to maybe become the oldest ever finisher of Western States. So it's a lot of fun coaching athletes, all kinds of athletes, but particularly those older ones. Man, that you can light a fire under them, and they'll make a difference.
So you've got a number of athletes up there, AJW. You don't have to list their names, but list the one single piece of most valuable advice that you give a runner before their 100-mile race. What comes out of AJW?
Pay as much attention to what's between the ears as what's below the waist. In other words, this race is going to become a mental test before you know it, whether it happens at mile 30, mile 50, mile 80. Your mind is going to tell you, oh, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm tired. I'm sore. I'm way behind my pace, whatever. Be ready to fight that mental battle. Because if you're trained up, you're going to be able to, you're physically capable of doing it. What gets in most people's way is their mind.
Wonderful.
Good
Scott
advice.
Ward, that is called a peak ending.
That is called a peak ending. So go out and run.
Mas.